Mr. Chairman, we can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Keith. Good morning. Welcome to this virtual Metro Plan Orlando Technical Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Nabil Mohaizen, and I'll be chairing this meeting today. Metro Plan staff is working to ensure this meeting runs smoothly. Today's meeting was advertised on Metro Plans Orlando's website, social media, as well as through targeted emails. The Florida Sunshine Law requires a quorum to be physically present in a room for a government meeting. Governor DeSantis has suspended this requirement in an executive order, allowing government boards to conduct business using virtual meetings. This order has expired on October 31st of last year, so this meeting is being held in a workshop format. Mr. Kasky will explain further shortly. We will keep microphones muted unless you have been recognized to speak, and we will use the raise hand feature to participate in the discussion. There are two public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public who want to speak will use the raise hand feature found in the participants tab. If you're attending by phone, you can hit the *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted by staff, and we will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. We also accepted comments by email, phone messages before the meeting. The guidelines for public comments are posted on the website at metroplanorlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future online meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablets, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact the Metro Plan Orlando staff. At this point, I have a few comments I'd like to share with you. First is I'm pretty excited about the work of the committee, where we had initially wanted to respond to the Dangerous by Design committee. So we formed an ad hoc committee thanks to the volunteers. This ad hoc, as you'll hear at the end of this meeting, towards the end of this meeting, is going to be formalized to regularly report to the Metro Plan board. So things are forming. Hopefully we'll be very effective, and among all these talented folks that we have here, I'm very excited about the outcome of this continuing reporting. Perhaps we will be able to move the needle somewhat in a positive direction. Some of the other things I want to share with you if you would allow me, are about the transportation industry challenges in the coming years post-COVID. As you all have heard before, supply chain change is an issue. So we'll have to work very hard at integrating the supply chain after the pandemic. And that means perhaps altering customer expectations, relying more on our digital tools in transportation. Also, digital transforming means reshaping both strategies and models of conducting transportation industry to stay fully competitive in the digital age. I've read some things about challenging in the core system of the transportation, which we have kind of started that before the pandemic, and that involves partially transport automation and internet involvement, which will include connected vehicles, full vehicle automation, truck convoys to enhance and make transportation products more efficient, and as well as connected vehicles involvement in the day-to-day driving. The last challenge that we all have heard enough about recently, which is the cybersecurity. And the cyber, we've been more reliant on the cyber world now, with in the past year under the circumstances, so where basically cyber criminals are having a field day, hacking into all sorts of systems. So we need to focus on a permanent approach to solve this issue. The transportation industry will still be battling cybersecurity problems just like everyone else in the coming years, I should say. The transportation industry aims to enhance the visibility of the supply chain as means of elevating integrity and product security to keep transportation clients intact and trusting the system. The systems will have to be much has to be done to secure our systems that we use in transportations. These are some of the challenges that we're facing in the coming years. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Keith Caskey of the Metro Plan Orlando staff for a staff agenda review. Mr. Caskey.
Okay, well, good morning again, Mr. Chairman and committee members and all those attending online. Once again, we'd like to thank you for working with us as we conduct these virtual meetings. And as always, we appreciate your patience and understanding. And based on the direction from our board of their meeting in December, this meeting is being held as a virtual workshop in which action items that are being advanced to the Metro Plan Orlando board will be reviewed and discussed, but no formal action will be taken so that a quorum will not be required. Now, we will not be meeting in July. However, starting with the next TAC meeting in August, we will be going back to meeting the old-fashioned way. We're going to be meeting in person in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom. So a quorum will be required at the next meeting and all future meetings. And we will be approving all our minutes and ratifying all the board actions over the past year. So it will be important for as many of you to attend as can, so we'll have a quorum. And we will be sending you much more detailed information on this before the next meeting. As the chairman mentioned, we'll be using the raise hand feature to recognize committee members during the meeting and call on members of the public during the comment time. So if you've joined us on the phone only without the video screen, please use the *6 to mute and unmute your line, and please use *9 to raise your virtual hand so the meeting host can see that you wish to be recognized. And you'll see that there is a chat feature under toolbar, and this communicates with all panelists in this meeting, which includes committee members, staff, and presenters. And please only use this if you are having technical issues or need assistance. A full record of the chat comments will be included with the public record of the meeting. We do have one change on the agenda this morning. The order of the presentations has been switched, so the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate presentation will be going first, since the TSMO members already saw the traffic signal retiming presentation, so they'll be able to sign off after the I-4 BTU presentation if they want to do that. So, Mr. Chairman, that completes my announcements, and now we'd like to take attendance, and I'll ask Kathy Goldfarb to call the roll for the record. Again, we don't have any action items, so we will be able to move forward even if there isn't a quorum present. So I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Good morning. I'll ask all committee members to please go ahead and unmute yourselves now for the roll call, and you can go on mute again after your name is called. Please make sure your video is on if possible so we can confirm it's you. You'll find the unmute and video buttons on the bottom left side of your toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Please say here or present when your name is called. Abadan Tuono, Blackadar,
Present.
Brock,
Here.
Carnes, Cash,
Here.
Castro, Clem,
Present.
Cornelison, DeVries,
Present.
Elisar, Friel, Gold,
Here.
Hammer, Hardwick,
Here.
Hawthorne,
Present.
Richmond,
Present.
Jacobs,
Here.
Wetzel,
Present.
Kathy,
King.
this is Chris Cantz.
Yeah, I have you listed.
Thank you.
King, Krug, Hopper, Muhason,
Present.
Nastasi,
Here.
O'Keefe,
Present.
O'Lory,
Here.
Radzai,
Here.
Pullum,
Here.
Rigby, Giranella, Schmidt, Centerens,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Stirk,
Here.
Sudemeyer,
Here.
Thorpe, Edie,
Present.
Walter,
Here.
Wharton,
Here.
Williams. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you very much for the roll call, Ms. Goldfarb. We will now go to the public comment portion of the presentation. We will hear public comments on what we normally call action items, but in this format, this format will be our items for review rather and/or discussion. Do we have any people who want to speak to any of these items? If so, please use the raise hand function found at the bottom of your screen or by pressing *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your phone temporarily. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Please accept that prompt to activate the microphone. We ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes after providing your name and address for the record. Do we have any public comments at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any hands raised.
Were there any written comments that submitted before the meeting today, Mr. Caskey?
No, there were not.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the presentation segment of our meeting today. We have 2 presentations listed on the agenda. Please use the raise hand function to be recognized if you want to ask questions. You may raise your hand during the presentation to indicate that you want to ask a question. However, we will hold all questions until the presentation ends. If you're having audio issues, you can type your questions into the chat box and a moderator will relay your questions to the group. First presentation is the status report on the I-4 and Beyond Ultimate Project by Ms. Catalina Chacon from the Department of Transportation, Florida Department of Transportation. Ms. Chacon, please proceed.
Hi, good morning. My name's Todd Helton. I'll be presenting on behalf of Catalina Chacon this morning. I'm an FDOT project manager, and I'm going to provide an update on I-4 Beyond the Ultimate. Next slide, please. So for our agenda today, I'm going to provide a brief overview of I-4 Beyond the Ultimate, or BTU. I'll provide an update on the Sand Lake Road project near I-4 Ultimate. I'll be discussing how we are reimagining the I-4 corridor and how that affects both the south and north sections of I-4 BTU. I'll go through our next steps and provide a programming update for I-4, and then I'll open up for questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to go over a brief overview on the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project. Next slide. So some of the goals of the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project include increasing safety and enhancing mobility. We recognize that I-4 is the backbone of Central Florida. We want to ensure we provide a reliable transportation system to increase connectivity among the Central Florida community, as well as support the economy of the region. Next slide. Okay, so here we're looking at the south extension of I-4 BTU. On the left side, we have the 4 segments that came out of the PD&E study. Starting at the southern limit of I-4 Ultimate, we have I-4 BTU Segment 2, and the BTU projects extend all the way to Polk County with Segment 5. On the right side, we have the current funding status of these segments. As you can see, we only have 1 segment programmed for construction funding, but not until the outer years. The right-of-way funding is also limited, with only 1 segment being fully funded for right-of-way. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're looking at the north extension of I-4 BTU. On the left side, we have 2 segments that came out of the PD&E study. Starting at the north end of I-4 Ultimate, we have Segment 3 in Seminole County, and then Segment 4 in Volusia County. That one goes all the way to State Road 472 in DeLand. On the right side, we have the current funding status of these segments. As you can see, we have a similar situation as the south, with only 1 project funded for construction in the outer years, and only Segment 3 funded for right-of-way. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears for a bit and provide an update to the I-4 at Sand Lake Road Interchange project. Next slide. Okay, so the I-4 Ultimate project that's under construction is expected to reach final completion by the end of 2021. With the current analysis being done for the I-4 at Sand Lake Road Interchange project, we're seeing a future I-4 bottleneck between State Road 528 and Sand Lake Road, and potential impacts to the I-4 express lane termination point. This termination point is shown in the yellow circle on the screen. We'll need to provide additional capacity to I-4 to address this issue. Okay, next slide. So how do we address this issue, this capacity issue with the express lanes? The department's planning to include this extra capacity to I-4 with the I-4 at Sand Lake Road Interchange project. This interchange is adjacent to the is the adjacent interchange to the termination point of I-4 Ultimate and the express lanes. In order to keep the letting for the Sand Lake Road project in spring of 2022 as planned now, this project will now be let as a design build project. The estimated construction cost for the Sand Lake Interchange project, along with this added capacity, is at about $208 million. The Sand Lake Road Interchange will be converted into a diverging diamond interchange, and the additional capacity to I-4 will be provided by extending a single buffer separated express lane in the westbound direction. Next slide, please. Okay, so now going back a bit to the current funding status I shared earlier, I'm going to share how the department is reimagining the I-4 BTU corridor. Next slide. So one of the biggest challenges we face is the funding status of the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate segments. As I shared earlier, only a few segments are funded for construction, and not anytime soon. We know we have needs on I-4, and we want to build the I-4 BTU. Keeping this in mind, and the fact that we now have new tools and lessons learned from previous projects, we're currently doing a value engineering evaluation of the corridor. We want to revisit the typical section for I-4 BTU and see if we can find efficiencies with new tools available to use. I'll go over those tools next. But we realize we need to provide more capacity to I-4, and we want to evaluate this capacity with the updated managed lanes policy available to us. As we build more express lanes, we have more experience with the access points to and from the express lanes. So we want to revisit those assumptions. And finally, the size and cost of the projects. As I mentioned, funding is one of the challenges we face. So we want to see if we can identify smaller size projects that can be easier to fund to build the BTU. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the new tools that are now available to us. As I just mentioned, we have updated policies and guidance that we would like to take advantage of to see if we can implement to this project. One of those policies is the managed lane policy. This policy became effective in 2020, and what this gives us is flexibility on how we add the extra capacity needed to I-4. The previous policy available to us when we were working on the PD&E study consisted of adding express lanes to the interstate when extra capacity was needed. Now we can look at other types of managed lanes or general use lanes to provide the capacity needed. We also have more experience and updated guidance on direct connects and ingress and egress points to and from the express lanes as the state builds more express lanes. We now have new parameters when it comes to the separation type between express lanes and the general use lanes as well. And finally, we have lessons learned from our ongoing construction projects, as well as feedback from the industry. One of the goals of our value engineering approach is to come up with smaller size projects that we can get funded easier and build towards the big BTU picture. Next slide. Okay, so how are we doing this? Our evaluation approach includes we need to maintain the purpose and need from I-4 BTU PD&E. We realize we spent a lot of time and effort on the PD&E study, and the purpose and need remains valid, so we're maintaining these. We need to stay within the right-of-way defined by I-4 BTU PD&E. While we reimagine the I-4 BTU corridor with the new available tools, we do not want to go outside the already defined right-of-way from the PD&E. We need to provide similar traffic performance as I-4 BTU PD&E. We identify cost-saving opportunities through value engineering, but we're looking at I-4 holistically. Our goal is to come up with smaller size projects that when funding becomes available can move to the construction phase. We want to be successful at delivering these projects and also want the construction industry to be able to build these projects. We recognize the need for reevaluations, approvals, and project development process. As we identify these smaller projects and go through our evaluation, we need to keep in mind that traffic reevaluations and environmental reevaluations will need to take place, and this takes time. So we have to keep this in mind for our schedules. And finally, we want to continue engaging our stakeholders to receive feedback on our evaluation. Next slide. Okay, so looking at the south extension, we broke it up into two segments. The first segment goes from State Road 528 to US 192. We have a potential value engineering approach based on all the tools and lessons learned I just covered. The key elements of our value engineered concept include bring I-4 main line at grade. The next two slides will depict this in a better way. We're going to include buffer separation between the express lanes and the general use lanes. We're going to relook at the access points and direct connects, reconfigure interchanges if needed. While we're preserving some of the concepts from the PD&E, we may have to relook at the interchange configuration to ensure that there are no conflicts by bringing the main line of I-4 at grade. We'll preserve some of the collector distributor systems from the PD&E in the westbound direction. Next slide. If you could just click it again. Thank you. So this is the typical section that was approved in the PD&E study of I-4. It has the general use lanes elevated and utilize barrier separation for the express lanes. Next slide. So this is the potential typical section that utilizes those new tools available to us, such as the buffer separation, and brings the I-4 main line at grade. This translates into significant cost savings opportunities to our project, making it easier to get funding when it becomes available. Next slide. Our second segment of the south extension goes from US 192 to US 27 in Polk County. We are currently in the early stages of our evaluation based on the new tools available to us. We're coordinating with Brightline as they have plans to connect Orlando to Tampa, And we're also coordinating with FDOT District 1 and Florida's Turnpike Enterprise as they have projects in this area. We want to make sure we're not precluding each other from our projects. Next slide. Okay, so looking at the north extension of I-4 from State Road 434 to State Road 472. We are also in the project evaluation phase for this section. We're looking at the operational needs of I-4. We need to provide capacity to I-4 while also considering interchange and surface street operations. As we progress with our evaluation and with the latest talks about stimulus funding for infrastructure projects from the current administration, we want to be ready if the funding becomes available. So again, we're looking at the smaller size projects that both the department and the industry can deliver quickly and more efficiently. Next slide. Okay, so our next steps. So what are the next steps with regards to this value engineering approach? We want to continue engaging our stakeholders and local partners. As we progress on our evaluation and have more details and information to share, we'll be reaching back out to obtain feedback, and we will be adjusting our approach to our project as funding opportunities arise. Next slide. And now we have a quick programming update. Next slide, please. Okay, so projects that are currently programmed, funded for construction. We have FPID 444187-1. This is the DDI at County Road 532, interchange with I-4. Was awarded March of 21 and the estimated completion is fall of 22. We have FPID 444329-1. We're adding auxiliary lanes along I-4 eastbound and westbound from County Road 532 to State Road 429. That one's in design and the letting is scheduled for August of this year. FPID 443958-1, milling and resurfacing of I-4 from Polk County, the Polk County line to west of State Road 417. Also design underway and letting in August. We have FPID 441113-1, that's interim Darrell Carter interchange, and letting is currently scheduled for January of 22. And FPID 444315-1, Sand Lake Road, State Road 482 interchange, and that's letting in May of 22. Some other projects not included on the slide, but I want to mention projects in Seminole County. We have FPID 439682-4, that's E.E. Williamson Road Bridge reconstruction project. It's under construction and the estimate for the completion is in summer of this year. FPID 439682-3, that's the eastbound I-4 new auxiliary lane from I-4 Ultimate to Lake Mary Boulevard. Also has an estimated completion in summer of this year. FPID 439682-1, it's repaving westbound I-4 in Seminole County, and it's nearly complete, if not complete already. And FPID 240200-4, Wekiva Parkway, Section 8, and the estimated completion for that one is in spring of 2023. Next slide. So that's the end of my presentation. At this time, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. If you have any questions, please be reminded to use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen and unmute yourself. Do you have any questions for this presentation? Okay, I see two hands. The first one by Mr. Nastasi. You've been recognized. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Todd. This is Renzo in Orange County. Thank you for your presentation. On the Darrell Carter Parkway interchange, I know we talked about this previously, but is there a time frame for completing that interchange, essentially going from the interim to the ultimate?
So for the interim project, estimated completion time is about 2.5 years. For kind of, I think if you're asking about the ultimate, adding that final leg, that's going to be dependent upon funding for the larger I-4 BTU project. So kind of difficult to say right now until we get that funding in place.
Yeah, understood. So the configuration of the interim is the same as what was put together, I guess, a couple of years ago. So nothing's changed since then, right? In terms of design.
Correct. Right.
Okay. And then one final quick thing on the Sand Lake Interchange. Could you just send over the plan sheets for that area where you've got the westbound additional lane being constructed there? Because I don't need the full set of plans at the moment, but if you could just send the appropriate plan sheets, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. You mean the concept for the additional express lane?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
All right, I have another raised hand from Ms. Allure. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Todd. Tommy O'Lory with Osceola County. I just wanted you to know that we are doing a widening project of Old Lake Wilson, which currently has a bridge over I-4 near the State Road 429 I-4 interchange. I think we'll probably need to set up a meeting with you all because I think you're replacing that bridge as part of your BTU plans. We need to coordinate on timing and things of that nature. So I was just wondering would we coordinate that meeting through you or whom?
You can coordinate through me. Also, Sue Howell is FDOT project manager that's handling that one, but either way, we'll get that meeting set up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And perhaps you could add your contact information for the rest of the group on the chat box here, if you would, please, Todd.
Sure.
Anyone has any other questions for on this presentation? I don't see any raised hands. Anyone? Yes. Mr. Aaron Strick, go ahead.
Hello, good morning. I was looking at the I-4 Ultimate South slide and curious how we are coordinating with the Brightline about maintaining that rail corridor, because that's something that's not shown on that slide.
Right. So we have been in coordination with Brightline, and obviously we're aware that rail is a high priority. So we're evaluating opportunities to accommodate the rail with our new proposed typical as a part of the entire project evaluation, and through coordination with Brightline.
And is anything with the interim auxiliary lanes that you're adding gonna make that more easy to accomplish later or be impeded in any way?
No, so with the interim express lane, it's just that. So we will be widening to the median. There will be some room left, because we're just widening for one lane. I think the idea is that, kind of from a bigger picture with the larger BTU project, that's where we're going to be working with them. And of course, if it came along quicker, then we would be, coordinating with Brightline to make sure that we could accommodate.
Okay. I guess I'd like to see a typical section of that, because that's not what's on the slide. So just trying to get up to speed with that, where the project's at and what you're proposing.
Okay, we'll look into that and try to get something put together that shows that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I see no raised hands. Mr. Kasky, do you see any raised hands on your end?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I have a follow-up to Ms. Aaron's comment right now. Where do you see, or do you have any idea about where would this mass transit, the Bright Line, be located? Would it be in the median, or would it be outside the median?
Yeah, it's being evaluated now. For at least I know for a portion of it, I believe they're looking at the median, but it's being evaluated. It's hard for me to say for sure right now. I don't have that information for you. I just know that it's being looked at.
All right, great. I understand. The other question that I have, if I may, you had mentioned the reasons for postponing the project was value engineering along with the cost. What is different about obtaining or securing the cost for this portion of the project when we have a lot of potential to secure the costs in light of all the federal government monies that we're expecting, and we were able to secure costs previously? So is there any difference now? I'm thinking it should be easier now than before, but I stand to be corrected.
Well, primarily it's the portion that's never been funded, that area south or west of 528 is where we had a lot of the grade separation for the general use lanes. That was very costly. We never actually had funding for that segment, and part of the reason was because so much was needed. So what we're looking at, we're evaluating it to try to bring the project costs down, and we're also looking at how can we break these projects into smaller pieces to allow for that funding.
So you basically have a question about the timing of the cost relative to the project improvement, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the presentation and the good information that you provided. I think a lot of us have been waiting to hear about that. So thank you very much. Our next presentation is on the FY 2019-2020 traffic signal retiming program by Ms. Laura Bauk from MetroPlan Orlando staff. Ms. Bauk, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. Good morning again to those of you who saw this presentation at the TSMO meeting. I'm here this morning, as Chair said, to present briefly our findings from the fiscal year 2019-2020 signal retiming travel time and delay study. That's a study that we complete every year as a way to assess the value of our signal retiming program, where we'll collect before and after peak hour travel time, speed, and delay data, and then perform a benefit cost analysis. Next slide, please. A little background for anyone who may be unfamiliar with the signal retiming program. This is the 14th consecutive year that MetroPlan Orlando has funded the retiming and coordination of traffic signals throughout the region. Each year we work with you, our agency partners, to identify which signals in the region need to be retimed, and then new timing plans are implemented for each of the selected signals. This is a technology solution that we use because it gives us an opportunity to increase traffic flow, to mitigate congestion, to account for changes in traffic patterns, and to reduce delay, and also to improve air quality and safety. Signal retiming also provides municipalities with an opportunity to periodically examine intersection operations and corridor progression and identify related maintenance issues, particularly with our signal control equipment. For the 2019-2020 program, we retime signals on 30 corridor segments and at 17 independent intersections. Of those intersections, 14 of them were at school intersections, and the focus was on reducing delay during the school pickup and drop-off time period. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows the retiming projects that were completed in Osceola County. Next slide, please. This slide shows the retiming projects in Orange County, and as you can see, there were quite a few intersection and school intersection delay projects in Orange County. And finally, next slide, please. These are the projects that were retimed in Seminole County. Next slide, please. So looking at our findings for the corridor travel time results, generally the goal for our maintaining agencies is to reduce end-to-end travel times. And for the 1920 retiming program, 93% or 28 of the 30 corridor segments that were retimed had shorter end-to-end travel times after the retiming. And that same 93% or 28 corridors of the retimed corridors had reliable travel times as compared to only 80% or 24 corridors that had reliable travel times before the retiming. And of course, when we talk about those reliable travel times, it means you can expect your travel time on that roadway segment to be the same most of the time. Next slide, please. Looking at our intersection delay findings, 15 of the 17 intersections that were retimed had less intersection delay during the peak period. And for our school intersections, 57%, or about 8 of 14 of the school intersections, had reduced delay during those pickup and drop-off times. Next slide, please. This slide just provides a quick snapshot of the overall benefits for the 2019-2020 retiming program. This year's program resulted in an annual time savings of well over 500,000 vehicle hours, which converts to a 3-year benefit of more than $27 million, assuming a savings of about $18 an hour in reduced travel time. The total project cost for the retimings was $1.3 million, and the overall program had a benefit cost ratio of nearly 22. This high benefit cost ratio indicates that the retiming program continues to remain an effective program for Metro Plan Orlando to invest in. And to that point, next slide, please. This slide shows some historic BC ratios from 2010 on. You can see in the early years of when Metro Plan Orlando got involved with the program, we were getting very high BC ratios that started to decline. And around 2017, 2018, we were starting to wonder if perhaps we had reached the limits of our efficiency. But as you can see, the last couple of years, we've seen an uptick in those BC ratios. And so I think the takeaway is there's always more corridors that can be made more efficient and respond to those changing travel patterns. Next slide, please. So we also look at what the effect of reducing driver delay has on fuel savings and reduced vehicle emissions. And for our 2019-2020 program, we saw savings of 471,000 gallons of fuel per year and reduced our vehicle carbon dioxide emissions by about 4,600 tons annually. Next slide, please. I'm going to end by talking just a little bit about how signal timing and safety correspond. So historically, our signal retiming has provided us an opportunity to look at signal timing clearance intervals and pedestrian timing, and also to adjust to current best practices as needed. Maintaining the coordination along corridors can also reduce vehicle diversion and increase platooning, which can also benefit road users that are crossing the main corridors or turning onto the corridors from side streets. And in recent years, both Metro Plan Orlando and our agency partners have had an increased focus on how signal retiming can really provide some additional safety benefits. And so increasingly, we're looking at signal timing treatments like leading pedestrian intervals, no right turn on red, protected left turns, and reduced cycle lengths as a way to increase safety for our pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. Next slide, please. And that's all that I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Ms. Bauk, for the very informative presentation. Do we have any questions for Ms. Bauk? Just because you heard it before doesn't mean you can't have any questions. All right, good.
I see what, Mr. Chairman, I see
Yes, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Laura Hardwick has her hand up.
Yes. Ms. Hardwick.
Hello. Good to see you, Laura. I'm curious about if you could give some examples of the typical adjustments for the pedestrian signal timings that you make, whether it's more frequent or extending the length or the opposite of that. And then if y'all have done any research on the effects of speeds on the corridor. So we're measuring the time reliability and the time through the corridor, but I'm interested to know if we have any information on the overall speeds of the corridors before and after the signal retiming.
So to the first part of your question, typically the two things that what we see as part of the retimings are, like you said, extending the timing for pedestrians to cross streets if needed, and particularly where there are a lot of bicycle or pedestrian activity. And then I mentioned the leading pedestrian interval on that last slide, and that's where the intersection will get the all red and allow the pedestrians to go out into the intersection ahead of time. So those are the two main treatments that I've generally seen during my time overseeing this program. And then for the travel speeds, as part of the the corridor analysis, that's exactly what we look at, is sort of the end-to-end travel time for the segments where for the corridor segments where all of the lights are retimed along that segment. Does that answer your question, or are you looking for more?
No, I mean more specific to each vehicle speeds. If the average speed of vehicles are increasing with the retiming, not necessarily the travel time corridor to corridor. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. Okay, so that we have not looked at as much in the past, but part of that I think is because of the type of data that we were using, which is usually sort of the Bluetooth data, and are actually experimenting more with some CV or connected vehicle data where we can see sort of those individual cars, what they're doing, and so that may be something that we can look at more as we start to look at new data sources.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
both.
you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any? Do we have any other questions for Ms. Bauk? I don't see any hands raised so far. Mr. Cascade, do you see any?
I don't see any hand raised.
All right, Ms. Bauk, we can't let you off the hook that easily, especially with your great help. I want to congratulate you on the amazing metrics here. 500 hours of vehicle hours have been saved in the 14 years of surviving this program, and it seems to be continuing for a longer time. This is a great accomplishment. My question, and the city of Kissimmee has benefited from this program, by the way. If you are looking at a corridor retiming and the corridor happened to have an additional traffic signal constructed in the interim after the retiming, shortly thereafter, how do you approach that? Do you just wait for the next year, or do you try to readjust?
So that's a very good question, actually. And so I will say that usually the corridors that are retimed are selected actually by our maintaining agencies. You probably all saw a call go out for retiming requests in May. And so once we get those requests, we fund as many projects as we're able to. And so the decision about how things like that, adding a new traffic signal or some other major change in traffic pattern, usually the decision is up to the maintaining agency on when the retiming is going to happen. But I think that's one of the nice things about this program, about single time retiming in general, is if you have those types of changes in travel patterns, you have the option to go back in and update things. It depends really on when the signal is added, I would say, for a specific corridor segment. Usually if a maintaining agency knows that something's going to be coming down the pike within the year after our retiming program, they'll either, they'll hold off maybe until the next year, or they'll resubmit it if they want to redo the retiming for that corridor.
Great, good to know. And for speaking of the May deadline, if somebody misses the deadline, do you have any grace period that they can try to approach you for that, or is it pretty strict?
I will say for the 2021-22 program, which is the one I just did the call for, I am still distributing things to the consultant. So if someone has a request, you can still probably get it to me. But usually we have everything distributed by the end of July so that we can get our consultants ready to move in time for school starting in the fall. And so then at that point, it would be probably the next year to get into our program. But I will say we're not the only ones that do retiming. FDOT has their retiming program, and of course our maintaining agencies. Some of them do retiming on their own. So there are opportunities.
Excellent. That's good to know. Did you hear that, members? Thanks again, Ms. Bach. With that, I don't see any other raised hands for questions. We will proceed to the next segment of our committee meeting today, which is we have 5 items for review. First item is a review of the May 21st, 2021 meeting minutes. The minutes will be found on tab 1 of your agenda package. I hope you had some time to review them. Are there any corrections or revisions that needs to be brought to the staff's attention at this point? As a reminder, use the raise hand function if you would, please. All right, seeing none, as a reminder, these will be brought back for formal approval in the future, which is perhaps starting in August. We, as you heard, we will be meeting in person. The next item would be a review of the emergency FDOT amendment FY 2021 through 24-25 TIP. This is found under your tab 2 of your agenda package. and will be presented by Mr. Keith Caskey. Mr. Caskey, please proceed.
Okay, well, this amendment request came up in late May after this committee and most of the other committees had already met. And this had to be amended into the state TIP by the June 10th deadline. So FDOT requested this amendment to be processed on an emergency basis. So our board chairwoman signed the resolution approving the request back on May 27th based on MetroPlan's policy for processing emergency TIP amendments. And this request includes moving part of the construction funding for the Cross Seminole Trail Connector project from the existing project number to a new project number. So City of Longwood can provide staff services for the project under a LAP agreement. And then the other project involves adding FTA grant funds and local matching funds for links to purchase 6 new electric buses for their limo system. And you all have the information on this in tab 2. And the board will be requested to ratify the signed resolution at their July 7th meeting. So any questions on that?
All right, thank you, Mr. Caskey. Any question from Mr. Caskey? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. I see none, and this will come back to for a board action in the future, as mentioned. The next item would be the FY 21-22 through the 25-26 TIP. This is found under tab 3 in your agendas. And Mr. Keith Caskey will again present that. Mr. Caskey, please proceed.
Okay, well, I gave you all a preview of the new TIP last month, and there's a link on your agenda where you can review the draft TIP, and then there's some additional information in tab 3. We had our virtual TIP public meeting this past Monday and had really good attendance. And this slide shows a comparison with the attendance that we had in our public meeting last year with the meeting this year. And last year we had 51 public attendees with a total attendance of 74, including the panelists. And this year we had 80 public attendees with a total attendance of 105. So we were very pleased with the turnout. Next slide, please. And there were a good number of questions and comments on various topics. And I listed some of the main topics on the slide there, such as the need to shift more funding away from major capacity highway projects to alternative transportation modes, such as transit and bike and ped and complete streets and so on. And then we had several questions and comments about the need to expand bus and Sunrail hours of service. And then there was some discussion about the need for more electric vehicle charging stations in the region, as well as for greater mobility equity for people without cars, and how Links is helping to address that issue. And we will be sending a summary of the comments out separately to this committee and all the other committees. Next slide, please. And we had 2 polling questions. So the first one was, which of these best describes your transportation personality? And there were 4 options, such as the debater, the advocate, the logistician, and the adventurer. And most people saw themselves as the advocate, having a vision for the perfect transportation system and working together to come up with solutions to achieve that vision. And then we can go to the next slide. The second question was, where should Central Florida increase spending the most to improve our transportation system? And by far, the most people voted to increase spending to improve transit connections between the bus and rail systems. Next slide, please. And then we had a group of panelists from our local jurisdictions and agencies that helped us answer questions during the meeting. And we'd really like to thank them for their participation. It was very helpful and we really appreciate it. And the TIP will be going to the board for approval at their July 7th meeting. With that, we'll open it up for questions.
Great, thanks again, Mr. Caskey. Do we have any questions for Mr. Caskey on this second? Yes, we do. Mr. Nastasi, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning again. This is a question for Ms. Henson with DOT. So on page 5-2, there's the 434 Forest City Road widening project from Edgewater to the Orange-Seminole County line. Back in December, we had, and by we, I mean Orange County staff and Lorene Bobo had a short meeting last December. And we were asked if we were opposed to not proceeding with the 6 laning, but do more of a complete streets project. And I see that this project still is shown as 6 lanes. And I'm not sure whether there was a similar conversation that took place with Seminole County. So just want to get some clarification there, because we had agreed that the complete streets approach might be more appropriate for this section of 434.
Hey, good morning. This is Rakinya. I don't have an answer, but I will check with Lorene and get back to you.
And Renzo, I just want to add that I have also reached out to the department on that project, so we're trying to set up a meeting.
Thank you. So just in terms of approving the TIP, this is one project out of hundreds, but still we just need to get straight on this issue because it's a fairly expensive project. And again, I don't know if the same conversation took place with Seminole County.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions on this request? I do see one of our attendees, public attendees, Joanne Cornelis. You've been recognized if you'd like to speak.
Mr. Chairman, she'll be recognized at the end under public comments. We do have a question from Aaron Sturck.
All right, Ms. Strick, you're recognized.
Hi there, good morning. I am curious about the project for the auxiliary lanes on I-4, and I just don't see that in the TIP. So there is a resurfacing project, and I'm trying to gather whether or not that is the project you're referring to.
Are you talking about the I-4 VTU project?
Yes, the presenter just described that there was an interim project to add capacity to a certain segment of the corridor in Osceola County. And I just don't see that project on the TIP. And I was curious if that was listed as the resurfacing project that is there, and if that was the extent of that, or if there's a different project number that I can follow up.
No, that's a different project number. The BTU project in Osceola County had funds programmed for design and I believe some right-of-way prior to fiscal year 2022. So it doesn't show up in the new TIP. And the additional funds for that project are not programmed until, or will not be programmed until sometime out beyond 2026. So that is a different project. That doesn't show up in the new TIP.
Right, I'm referring to what he mentioned they were doing in the interim, which is adding the capacity through some auxiliary lanes, which he described in his presentation as being inside of the existing lanes, but not taking up the Bright Line corridor. And I just don't see that project on the list.
Okay,
Let me jump in there, Keith. So Aaron, we did the presentation now for the BTU to give all of our committees and board a preview of some of the work that the department is doing. The next steps would be that actually we need to modify our MTP to accommodate that before we can get it into the TIP based on these new recommended improvements. So a couple more steps before we can get it into the TIP.
Okay. I think that's a point that is very important, that potentially the FDOT presenters should, outline the steps that it takes as they move forward to presenting this information to the board.
Thank you. Yes, this is still early. I don't think the department has finalized the full recommendations, but yes, soon as they're finalized, and we'll evaluate them as they go into our Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Additionally, I just had one more comment on the FDOT presentation. presented that the Seminole County project was fully funded for right-of-way, but that's something that's before us now for recommendation and coming to the board shortly for vote. So it's just an important distinction. The draft tip that went out a month ago for our review did not include that information. So it is new information to this committee. And something that is not yet approved. So, these are moving pieces, but I think they're presented as if they're already, underway, and there's still a lot of work to do on that. So we'll look forward to collaborating on that capacity improvement.
All right. Thank you both. Any other questions? I don't see any raised hands unless Mr. Caskey sees any. We will be proceeding to the next item, which is found in under tab 4 in your agenda. And since Mr. Lepp, our favorite topic is the PPL, we'll be presenting on the FY 2026-27 through the 2034-35 PPL topic. Mr. Neck, please proceed.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. And actually, next slide after that. Great. So just as a reminder, our prioritized project list is that bridge that gaps our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Transportation Improvement Program that Keith just presented. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a 20-year vision that goes beyond the TIP. And the prioritized project list is that 10-year gap. And that's a new thing this going into this prioritized project list that hasn't been in the last ones. New rules that came out from the federal government is that projects have to be identified in the first 10 years of your cost feasible plan to be entered into the Transportation Improvement Program. Our old plan, the 2040 long range plan and prioritized project list both had the same horizon year. So it was looking at a 20-year list of projects that were being prioritized. Now that list is shorter and we are only dealing with a 10-year list. Next slide, please. So as I said, they have to have direct linkage, the projects in that prioritized project list with the cost feasible plan, identified as cost feasible in those first 10 years. They were all developed to support our regional goals and objectives and performance measures and targets that were all attached to those. And the plan is also consistent with MetroPlan's funding policies, and that's for allocating those urbanized area TMA funds to the programs of complete streets, TSMO activities, sidewalks, trails, and transit. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have overarching goal areas, and within there are 27 performance measures assigned to them. The project prioritization or the performance-based planning prioritization process incorporates all of these performance metrics as it evaluates each corridor and the projects that are tied to that corridor for ranking and prioritization in this next year. So the more points that a corridor or project gets, the higher it will be ranked to be advanced hopefully into the next Transportation Improvement Program. Next slide, please. Something that came up after the preview that I gave last month to the committees is the board directed us to use a weighting component within the prioritization. The top ranked goal area was safety and security, not surprised with a lot of the conversations we've had in the region lately. Access and connectivity, as well as investment and economy, reliability and performance, and then health and environment are also goal areas and that are been weighted, but actually they've been weighted in the inverse of the numbers that you're seeing here. So safety security was our #1 ranked goal, but it actually received a weight of 5 points. And so on for access and connectivity, it received a weight of 4 points, 3 points for investment, all the way down to health and environment. That is the new list that you're seeing in your packet. It's a comparison against the unweighted ranked projects that were presented to you last month, and now the new weighted ranked projects based on these weighting of goal areas, as well as an emphasis on pedestrian and bicycle or vulnerable users on our roadway network. That was an additional factor that was added to this prioritization process and the list that you have to review. Next slide, please. Couple goal area or a couple programs that we've remained within the priority list and some new ones. So the Complete Streets and Data Collection Program under our TMA, as well as our as well as our school mobility and signal retiming programs all remain on the top of our priority list to be advanced, and continue with those programs first before we advance any phases. Some new programs that we've added that won't start until fiscal year 25, in coordination with our MTP adoption in the first year of that plan. We're allocating $2 million a year for TSMO activities on the national highway system. That hasn't been the case before. It's just been kind of sharing the TMA funds for the TSMO program. Now we've also added $1 million a year for safety emphasis, and also $1 million a year for sidewalk apps. And these are programs that we're going to look to start initiate over the next year in developing the next prioritized project list and identification of those projects for these new programs that will start funding in fiscal year 25. I also wanted to mention our new off-system construction program. This hasn't been in place in the past. It's actually kind of a surrogate of that trip list that we had within our prioritized project list of those larger projects that were off the state road system for widening or other major capital expense that just didn't fall under our TMA funding policies of a maximum of $4 million of construction. So this new program has been established in the plan. It's going to be a partnership with our local government partners, looking to have them complete the PD&E or design and right-of-way phases, all of those pre-phases. And then this would be construction assistance, up to possibly 100% of the construction, depending on funding availability, to get those projects moving forward. And this should help with some of those pedestrian overpasses and also off-system widening projects that we've had on the list, but we haven't had that mechanism to get implemented. Next slide, please. So here's a little update based on what I presented last month. I'll go through these, and a lot of it just changed very slightly in the rankings, really emphasizing more of complete streets and some safety projects, obviously with the weighting going towards safety and pedestrian vulnerability. Projects like John Young Parkway are still our #1, but actually moved up two places. And then some projects that still remained in our top moved down 1. So we saw some shifting of 1 to 2 places. Maximum, I think we saw a shift of 8 places in the rankings, but those were a lot on the lower end of the list of the priorities. Our top priorities still pretty much remain the same, with 1792, 535, and 434 moving forward in the process. Next slide, please. Here's our off-system construction program. We've only received a few applications from our local government partners. Like I said, this program doesn't start until 2025, so we will continue to mature and as we work with our local government partners to get more of these projects on the list. But what's required is that commitment of funding of the initial phases. Once that is kind of committed to within a work program or an element, then we can look to put that into the prioritization and get those moving into possibly the TIP based on the time frame for when construction is needed. And the top projects on that list based on the rankings are Old Lake Wilson and Canoe Creek down in Osceola County. Next slide, please. The TSMO and ITS improvements really didn't move much with the updated weighting of the goal area as well as the pedestrian emphasis. These are still our top TSMO projects that were identified through the process. Looking at Pine Street and Canoe Creek is also bubbling up, as well as Robinson Street in Huey and Orlando. Next slide, please. And then our Complete Streets program, still the top projects didn't have much movement because they are all pretty much focused on pedestrian and safety improvements on our corridors. So we didn't see much movement there. And we still have West Warren and Central Ave as our top 2 projects looking to advance next year into the TIP. Next slide, please. And our off-system or bicycle pedestrian improvements are our regional trails, not really on the roadway system, so that list has remained pretty intact, looking at Little Econ and Shingle Creek as our top priorities to move forward into next year's TIP. And then next slide, please. And last but not least, our transit capital projects. We're still looking to support links with their transit asset management and maintaining their system. Sunrail Phase 3, the connection from OA to Metalwoods, is our top priority premium transit project. but we recognize that items 3 and 4 are critically important to Lynx to expand their system and really have more buses and have more coverage. So we will be working with them on those 2 priorities to get them implemented. And next slide, please. So our next steps, we'll be presenting this to the MAC and then ultimately to the board for their adoption on July 7th. Once it's adopted, we'll be submitting the prioritized project list for that national highway and state roads to the Department of Transportation, as well as our TMA programming list for the off-system projects. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thanks for the presentation, Nick. Any questions for Mr. Lepp? I see 2 hands. First one, Mr. Nastasi, please proceed.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Lepp. I know you've heard this comment earlier this morning, but just wondering what the status is of the equity issue and whether that's going to be brought up as a policy issue with the board sometime, hopefully in the near future. And also, I believe we had asked for, maybe the last 5-6 years of allocation by county to sort of assess that equity issue. So just want to reinforce the desire to have that conversation, if not here, then as a policy issue.
Thank you again. Yes, and we will look to revisit that and bring it up to the board for their ultimate policy direction. And we'll start, we're putting together that fair share kind of comparison of the counties as we speak, as we're putting together the tip right now. So we'll look to get that out to you.
Right. Next request to speak is from Ms. Hardwick. Ms. Hardwick, you have the floor.
Hey, I just wanted to point out something that the weighted ranking has done by using the most dangerous corridors for people walking and biking and double weighting those points. We've adjusted the priority list based on dangerous conditions, but not necessarily projects that address those dangerous conditions. So you can see a couple of the projects in the top of the list are road widenings have been bumped up because the roads are dangerous for people biking and walking, when that type of project may not be the right solution to address that safety issue. So I wanted to point that out, and Nick and I had discussed what this might look like in terms of these are legacy projects on our list. And as Renzo mentioned earlier, some of those widening projects might be shifted more towards complete streets. So I just wanted to point out that as we prioritize our dangerous corridors, we need to make sure that we're submitting projects that are addressing those safety conditions.
Thank you very much. And yes, you are correct. So a lot of the projects, and it is, like I said in the beginning, all tied to our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which takes a broader look at what the improvement is needed on those segments. A lot of it comes up with a roadway widening or complete streets or TSMO activity, but the details behind that don't start getting worked out till the project starts moving closer. So yes, as that corridor is still identified as one of our top and the improvement identified in the MTP may be a widening. Once we get that closer to implementation, it could be reevaluated to see, well, what is the real necessary improvement to solve the need? And it could be something, as like Renzo mentioned before, it could have been a widening solution that could turn into a complete street and more of a pedestrian improvement. But we do recognize that those are still our top corridors that need to be addressed. Yep. Thank you.
Interesting points. Thank you both. Next, raise hand from Mr. Conroy Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I'm just commenting that I think the Metro Plan worked hard on putting this together and what is a new approach to the way we have been doing things. And I'm happy to see that all the efforts that we put into getting to this point, is finally coming to fruition and we're moving forward. I thoroughly enjoy working with all the other partners with the working group and working from that and coming to where we're at now. I think it's something that we should also be proud of. But of course, there's room for improvements, and echo some of the sentiments or comments mentioned earlier on how we can get better going forward. So good job.
Thanks, Conroy, and you are correct. This is one step, and we're going to continue to keep improving the process.
Great point. Now we see balance in the scale. It's refreshing to see to hear a compliment, although we all definitely appreciate deep down inside what the Metro Plan folks are doing for us. But with our focus on what we want to see happening, sometimes we forget to do that. We do appreciate Mr. Jacobs' comment. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Leb before we move on? All right, so hearing none, we'll proceed.
Yeah.
Looks like there's one more hand up.
Okay. Yeah, you recognize. Please proceed. I can't see the hand.
Hi, Nabil. This is Erin Sturf once again. I just wanted to commend you all as well. I was last on this committee in 2015, and I swear there's a time warp because we were doing exactly this and trying to do this. So it really has been a long road for Metro Plan to get here, and I commend you all on your tenacity in doing that. And I look forward to that equity analysis as well. The one request that I have for the prioritized project list is the score rankings for the I-4 projects are not on the PPL currently. I understand that there may be multiple different scores within a greater segment, but if we can continue to fill out that information, that would be helpful so that we can make those priority choices based on those ranks.
Thank you. Well, so there could be two different rankings, and probably go over that with the committees and board later on, but the department is working on an update to their SIS plan, which does have different evaluation criteria. So it'll be a combination between our process and their process as we incorporate that into the priority list. But thanks for recognizing that.
Thank you.
Thanks again. We'll move on to the next segment of our presentation this morning, from our meeting rather this morning. The next one will be the request for volunteers for pedestrian safety working group. As you recall, we had an ad hoc committee that came up with their findings, and this request will be based on that finding. So this will be presented by Mr. Mike Wilson from Metro Plan Orlando. Mr. Wilson, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. As those of you who were here earlier this morning know, we are looking for 3 volunteers from the Technical Advisory Committee, and looking for 1 from each county. The purpose of this working group will be to help develop planning and program strategies to improve safety for vulnerable users, with a special emphasis on corridor speeds. We expect we'll probably start off with monthly meetings, and depending on how the workflow goes, and we may shift that to quarterly. We'll figure out when the meetings will be held as we get the whole group together, and then we can pull people as to the most effective day and time for a meeting. So we're looking for, as I said, 1 from each county. In this morning's meeting, we had Orange and Osceola, we had county representatives, and Seminole had a municipal one. Might be good to flip that around so we get continue that mix of county and municipal. So, Mr. Chairman, I hand it back to you to.
Thank you, Mike. You do not need volunteers from this committee then?
Oh, yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay. So any volunteers for this committee led by Mike Wilson from Metro Plan for the Safety Committee? That this committee will be reporting to the board, the Metro Plan board, regularly. So any volunteers?
Chairman, this is Bill Horton of Seminole County. I'll step in for the county.
All right, excellent. So we got Bill Horton. 2 more. Any
It
other?
would be my honor. This is Laura Hardwick.
Excellent. And you've worked on that before, Laura, initially. So we have Laura Hardwick as well. Mr. Nastasia, are you volunteering?
No, I would just want to reaffirm Hazem Al-Assar's representation from Orange County since he decided to be on vacation. We'll nominate him again. But I would have somebody from a municipality in Orange County, if they would like to volunteer, we'd be happy to support that.
Okay, great. Mike, you got that?
Yes. Oh, so actually, Hazem was nominated by Brian Sanders this morning at TSMO, so we already have him for Orange County as a TSMO rep.
No, understood. I was just reaffirming that.
Okay.
Just looking to have somebody from a municipality in Orange County.
Okay.
I'm
Thanks.
sure he'll appreciate your service there, Mr. Nastasi, when he gets back. Mr. DeFries, please proceed. You want to volunteer?
Sorry, I was muted. So I was going to volunteer Justin Eason. He's my alternate for TAC. But you had mentioned earlier that you're looking for potentially municipalities within the county. I don't know if there's if anyone from one of the cities, but if not, then I'd like to volunteer Justin if there's not another volunteer from the city.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
Mike, you have all you need, and we have a comment from Commissioner Ed Gold. Commissioner Gold, please proceed.
Yes, I would be interested in volunteering as well, possibly. So if you find difficulty in finding somebody from Orange County,
Excellent.
certainly.
Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioner. I think we got all we need. Mike, do you have any other comments, or are you happy?
We're good.
Okay, excellent.
Thank
Thanks for the volunteers, and thanks for all your good work with this. It's a work in progress, and looking forward to see the outcome of this work that you all are doing. So appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, we have two other hands raised.
Okay, 1 second. Yes, Miss Stirk, please proceed. Can you hear us, Ms. Stirk?
I'm sorry. I don't know if you need a fourth or fifth person or if it's too many hands in the pot, but I am willing to participate in it and would enjoy it. And I just had a quick question for Mike. Could you repeat the purview of the committee and where the recommendations will be made? I know you said to the board, but.
Right. Well, so it will be to develop both planning and program strategies to improve safety for vulnerable users with a special emphasis on corridor speeds. And the recommendations from the group, will go to wherever it's most useful, and whether it's to staff or to the other committees and board or to FDOT, for example. But in the way that we typically do with committees generally.
Right, and I think that'll be very helpful for what Nick was saying earlier about as the projects get closer to coming to fruition, just having that extra lens to look through. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Next comment is coming from Mr. DeFries. Please proceed.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide clarification if there's any possibility we would like to have Justin Eason be on the committee. I know you mentioned 3, but we'd like to be able to have Justin as one of the members.
Yeah, I've got him down. Yeah, since we haven't heard from either Kissimmee or St. Cloud for Osceola, we would be happy to bring in Justin.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Mike,
you,
I'm
Mr. Chair.
representing St. Cloud.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well,
thank you.
well, I mean, if you would like, I mean, leave it up to the committee, obviously. But.
It's no problem if there's a cap on the number of people.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Getting a message from Nick saying that we're fine with taking you both. So,
Perfect. Thank you.
all right,
So I think you have the good mix that you want, Mike. You're good to go.
certainly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks to all the volunteers and thank you for your good work, Mike, on this. Looking forward to seeing the results come into fruition. The next item on the agenda today would be the TAC only presentations, which we have none today. Also, you have under tab 4 of your agenda package, there are several items under that tab for your review, if you would. Upcoming meetings, our next TAC meeting will be in person, as you've heard, and it's going to take place on August the 27th. As you heard earlier, this meeting will be held in person, and MAC members are required to attend in person to be considered present for this meeting, so please plan accordingly. Members of the public may also attend in person or can continue to join the meeting virtually on Zoom, as that would be available. Staff will be sending out more details, including health and safety protocols, in advance of the July meeting, and that is for the board, and also in advance of the August meeting for the Technical Advisory Committee, because we will not have a July meeting. The TAC committee will not have a July meeting. At this point, we come to other business. Are there any committee members who have other business to discuss today? If so, please raise your hand, use the raise hand function to raise your hand and we'd be recognized.
Don't see any hands. Yeah, I don't see any hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. I don't see any, Ms. Caskey. Who is it? Oh, you don't, you see no hands raised.
Correct.
My apology. I thought you said you said the otherwise. With no hands raised, we'll get to the public comments portion of the committee, of the meeting rather. If any members of the public wishes to comment, which I know we have one, please state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Are there any comments at this time, Mr. Caskey?
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Ms. Joanne. Proceed, please.
Yeah, I'm Joanne Canellis. I live in 324 Claremont Avenue, Lake Mary, Florida, 32746. Yes, we need 24 hours train and bus service, including holidays, weekends, and night times and stuff. And we need the bus over at the Country Club Road, the end, from Seminole State College to the train station in Lake Mary. And we need the bus stop right there at the Estella Road, right there, which is the next, right there where the park is, the little park. And it's between the park and the duplex and stuff like that. And we need the bus stop back to Oviedo Boulevard at the big Kahuna pole here there and stuff, which is also known as a aquatics facility and gymnasium there. The very same spot is a Kahuna pool, big Kahuna pools, stuff like that. We need a bus stop there. You know where that is. It's right in front of this. There's a swimming pool that I go to on Saturdays now too. So that way no one would be stranded coming out of the pool to the house or the church and stuff like that. So I don't be late like I did last Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canellis. Appreciate the comments, and they have
Miss
been
Canellis.
Canellis.
Miss Canellis. MISS. Thank you.
Okay, we got it. You've been recognized. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
At this point, we come to the point that we thought we may never come to at this meeting, which is the end of the virtual meetings for now. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for your dedication, your diligence attending these meetings, which initially seemed pretty awkward, but you went through it and you did great. I appreciate the engagement and you got everybody involved. Just wanted to thank you sincerely for all your efforts and that. Also, I can't thank enough the staff members of MetroPlan for their hard work under leadership of our MetroPlan board and Mr. Hotman for their leadership. We've seen just part of what they have done. They have been working diligently behind the scenes, providing technical support and training for us initially when this whole thing started. So I want to thank them sincerely for that. I can't help it but owe an apology as well for our children and our pets for locking them during the work hours and intruding in their privacy during this pandemic time. But hopefully I look forward to seeing all of you healthy in August. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.